Today's talk is titled Communities of Resistance and Resilience, UUSC and Global Solidarity Now, to be delivered by Reverend Laura Randall. Reverend Laura is the Director of Development and Congregation Relations for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. As a member of UUSC's development team, Laura facilitates partnerships to strengthen the impact of UUSC and the social justice reach of UU communities like us. Through preaching, teaching, relationship building, and fundraising, Laura connects the work of UUSC to Unitarian Universalist congregations. Prior to joining UUSC, Laura's denominational work included serving as the Legacy Campaign Director for the Wake Now Our Vision collaborative campaign, and as the Legacy Gifts Manager for the Unitarian Universalist Association. Laura's ministry has also included hospice, chaplaincy, and Alzheimer's education and advocacy. Laura holds a graduate degree in divinity from Harvard Divinity School and an undergraduate degree in English and Communication Studies from Alfred University. Please welcome Reverend Laura Randall speaking to us from Boston, Massachusetts.
Hello, friends. It is so good to be virtually with you this morning. This is a complicated and tender time of year, isn't it? Especially this year. It's a time when gratitude and grief are intermingled as we mark Thanksgiving and honor the National Day of Mourning with our Indigenous siblings. Gratitude and grief are often found together. We celebrate the loved ones we gather with while missing those who are not at the table. And of course, many of us are in the midst of deep community grief after November's election. While the initial shock and despair of the immediate aftermath may have dissipated somewhat for many of us, we are still grieving. Grief is loud and messy and painful, and it must be felt if we're going to be able to transform this grief into something that supports life. Grief ignored and buried within us will fester and come out in destructive ways in the future. So I want to encourage us not to try to avoid or rush past this grief. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It will look different for everyone. Reach towards the coping mechanisms that foster grounding and connection. Things like coming together in the community you're in right now. Let us give each other and ourselves grace. We are all going through it, and it's okay not to be okay. One of the grounding practices I frequently reach for when despair wraps its fist around my heart is to look to the justice movements of the past and how justice makers around the world are carrying forth this legacy today. Working for the UU Service Committee, better known as UUSC, I get to witness the incredible tapestry of connections and imagination that make them possible. In the wake of the US presidential election, many of our international partners reached out to us, offering concern, solidarity, and perspective. So many of our partners work for justice in the context of authoritarian regimes and state violence. They know what it takes to engage in effective resistance and to prioritize adaptability, resilience, and commitment to deeply held values above all. They know how to survive and even thrive through community care, mutuality, and persistent hope. One of our partners, Juan Jose, who lives in Honduras, wrote to us on November 6th that the resistance of centuries makes us strong. We have examples so close to us to draw on for perspective. Indigenous communities and resistance for 500 years in Guatemala helped bring a previously unexpected moment of real democracy. The women of FEM in Nicaragua literally cultivating life and consciousness under an authoritarian regime. the entirety of Honduran organizing in the Agwan, and beyond that keeps moving, keeps focus on justice and care for the earth, even as we grieve and rage at what is being taken from them, from us, and from the land. Let us keep these examples before us as we look for solutions in global solidarity and mutual care instead of American exceptionalism and individualism that has plagued our culture for so long. UUSC is an international human rights organization grounded in Unitarian Universalism that has been a powerful force for justice since its founding in 1940 in response to the rise of Nazism. UUSC's work is based on a partnership model that centers the experience and leadership of the people who are most impacted by injustice. This partnership includes support of some of the scrappiest, most creative, and courageous groups of people you can imagine who are often working for justice under very dangerous conditions. The founding of UUSC to resist fascism seems particularly apt right now, and it seems like a good time to retell the story of our most beloved symbol as Unitarian Universalists, the chalice. It is the chalice itself that most strongly calls us to the work of resisting oppressive systems, such as racism, sexism, and fascism, promoting human rights for all people, and caring for the precious earth we share. Our chalice, as sacred as it is to us, wasn't always the symbol of the Unitarian and Universalist faiths. In 1940, Reverend Charles Rind Joy was sent by the newly created Unitarian Service Committee to Lisbon, Portugal, which was the only port open in Europe at the time and therefore was filled with people who were fleeing the Nazi regime. Many of these refugees had to flee without any of the identification papers that were required to cross borders. So Joy decided to start making identification papers issued by the USC itself. This was uncharted water, but instead of focusing on the risks that he and the organization might be taking by doing this, Joy focused on saving lives, the lives of those fleeing fascism. He also decided that these papers needed a seal to look as official as other travel papers. So he asked Hans Dusch, an Austrian refugee and artist working in Lisbon, to create one. And the result was the basis of the flaming chalice as we know it now. And while all this was happening, Waitstill and Martha Sharp were also sent to Europe by the Unitarian Service Committee. They not only falsified documents to get people out, but also laundered money when necessary. UUSC's founders lived by the principle that good people disobey bad laws. So you see, the thing that binds us all as Unitarian Universalists together, the chalice, was founded on our commitment to human rights and to fighting fascism. Since the founding of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, we've been committed to supporting the work of liberation, even when, maybe especially when, it involves making holy trouble for the powers that would deny anyone their full humanity. We use the words partner and partnership a great deal at UUSC because our grassroots partners, small groups of leaders and visionaries who are directly impacted by oppression and human rights violations, are at the center of our work. Because we believe that communities bearing the brunt of climate force displacement, criminalization, and humanitarian crisis are also the communities that hold the solutions. This belief is at the core of everything we do at UUSC. This belief in the inherent worth and power of every person. That's why we engage in partnerships, not transactions. 50 years ago, the Guest at Your Table program was started to bring the stories of our global partners into congregations, to invite our partners through their stories into your worship services and around your kitchen tables as if we were all sharing a meal together. This year's guest partners include Konyo Ishimura from Joe Jickham in the Marshall Islands, who was helping his community heal from the destructive legacy of nuclear testing by the United States while envisioning a sustainable future for the Marshallese people. We have the guest Suleiman Wellings Longmore, a legal fellow with the Haitian Bridge Alliance, who is researching the ways racism is impacting the experiences of migrants of color in the United States. We have Katia Bonte, coordinator for GAR, who provides critical aid to repatriated Haitian migrants and fights for their human rights to be respected across borders. And there's Anna Maria Tespe, co-founder of Queers Fit, an organization offering resources and companionship to the queer community in Ukraine who have been impacted by Russia's invasion. Our last featured guest this year are the organizers of the Pink Haven Coalition, a network of activists and organizations working to help trans and gender expansive people who are fleeing unsafe states. Because of safety concerns, we cannot name an individual from Pink Haven as our guest, but I know our tables are big enough to welcome the whole crew. Perhaps you saw the profile on Pink Haven in UU World magazine, or you watched a presentation of the UUA's Volunteer Service Award to Pink Haven at this year's General Assembly. Given the implications of the recent US election results, it seems appropriate to focus today's guest at your table sermon on the Pink Haven Coalition. Two-spirit, trans, and gender expansive people have been targets of the right for decades, but the escalation in recent years is profound. 38 states currently have anti-transgender legislation on their books, with the number of new bills growing by the day. Today, the ACLU is tracking 530 anti-LGBTQI bills that are in process in various state legislatures, and most of these are anti-trans laws. That's 530 now. In 2015, the number of bills was 8. These bills are trying to legislate trans and queer people out of existence. Please know that this is not hyperbole. This has been central to the Republican platform for a decade. Michael Knowles said in his speech at the 2023 Conservative Political Action Conference that transgender people must be eradicated from public life. Trump and other Republican candidates spent $215 million this election cycle just on anti-trans ads. Because of these laws and this hostile environment, trans people in the United States now meet the definition of internally displaced people, or IDPs, by the United Nations. Additionally, these laws and the misinformation and hateful rhetoric surrounding them embolden physical violence against trans people, in addition to the legislative, medical, and economic violence already heaped upon them. The city of Odessa, Texas, recently instituted a $10,000 bounty for any trans person who uses a restroom, public or private, that aligns with their gender identity. Just on Wednesday, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine signed into law a transgender bathroom ban that extends beyond state-owned buildings and into private institutions as well. These laws are practically guaranteed to encourage vigilante violence. Hundreds of thousands of trans people and their families have already fled their homes to safer states, with more than 1 million considering doing so, according to a recent Data for Progress survey. Early last year, an organization led by trans activists approached UUSC and asked if we could help trans folks relocate to safer states. They saw the work that UUSC was doing in congregations supporting asylum seekers and wondered if Unitarian Universalists had the kind of networks, infrastructure, and desire to support a different kind of asylum seeker, one driven from their US-based homes and communities. Of course, UUSC said yes. In this work with trans activists, we are in coalition with other progressive faith organizations, mutual aid groups, and others who are committed to fighting back against the rising tide of fascism in the United States. We are working together to create networks of safety and direct support for trans beloveds and their families who need to relocate, access healthcare across state lines, or stay as safe as possible where they are. So, what brought us to this place where trans folks are being scapegoated by the right and states are actively trying to legislate them out of existence? A myriad of factors, to be sure, but one of the most prominent is the rise of fascism and authoritarianism in the United States. The Reverend Jim Foti addressed this phenomenon in his 2023 Skinner House sermon called Resisting Tyranny. He wrote, "Under fascism, you have an autocrat who believes in the cultural superiority and political supremacy of the country he leads. And he believes in the use of his concentrated power and unlimited violence to uphold the country's supremacy and its purity against perceived internal and external threats." In 1930s Germany, the made up threat was the Jewish community. And right now in our own country, trans folk are the made up threat of choice. It is no accident that the percentage of Jews in Germany in 1933 and the percentage of trans identified adults in the United States today is nearly identical. The strategy of demonizing a tiny, often misunderstood minority and using religion to do so is another tactic right out of the authoritarian playbook. Tyrants always punch down for political gain. The non-binary poet and activist Alok recently wrote that the best way to eliminate a group is to demonize them, such that their disappearance is seen as an act of justice, not discrimination. Whew. This is heavy stuff. Take a breath with me. All right. So now that the federal government is primed to be weaponized against trans and gender expansive beloveds, the need to support the Pink Haven Coalition has never been greater. We are working with them to build welcoming villages in safer states with sanctuary protections, states like California. We are also raising money for immediate emergency grants to families and individuals who need to flee before their rights and safety become even more restricted next month. As one of UUSC's staff members who helps monitor Pink Haven's email box, we've been flooded with requests for assistance and guidance since November 6th. We know that lives are on the line. And just as our religious ancestors did in 1940 and in the 84 years since then, I know that Unitarian Universalists are going to continue to come together to meet this moment. Writer and historian Rebecca Solnit wrote the following after the election. She said, "They want you to feel powerless and to surrender and to let them trample everything, and you're not going to let them. You're not going to give up, and neither am I. The fact that we cannot save everything does not mean we cannot save anything, and everything we can save is worth saving. You may need to grieve or scream or take time off, but you have a role no matter what. And right now, good friends and good principles are worth gathering in. Remember who you love. Remember what loves you. Remember in this tide of hate what love is. The pain you feel is because of what you love. The Wobblies used to say, don't mourn, organize, but you can do both at once. And you don't have to organize right away in this moment of furious mourning. You can be heartbroken or furious or both at once. You can scream in your car or on a cliff. You can get up tomorrow and water the flower pots and call someone who's upset and check your equipment for going onward. A lot of us are going to come under direct attack, and a lot of us are going to resist by building solidarity and sanctuary. Gather up your resources, the metaphysical ones that are the heart and soul and care, as well as the practical ones. People kept the faith in the dictatorships of South America in the 1970s and 80s, and in the East Bloc countries and the USSR. Women are protesting right now in Iran, and people there are writing poetry. There is no alternative to persevering, and that doesn't require you to feel good. You can keep walking whether it's sunny or raining. Take care of yourself and remember that taking care of something else is an important part of taking care of yourself because you are interwoven with 10 trillion things in this single garment of destiny that has been stained and torn, but is still being woven and mended and washed. My colleague in New Orleans, the Reverend Sarah Green, told a story about her children who had been raised in Tennessee and were about to go camping in a state park in Louisiana for the first time. They had lots of questions, especially about alligators. What do they eat? Are they fast? What do you do if one is chasing you? She told them that alligators eat what they can catch. Yes, they are fast. And then she offered several options in case it happened that an alligator started to chase them, including running in a zigzag pattern and rapping the alligator sharply on the snout with a stick. You don't have to lie down and get eaten, she told them. You have options. Beloved ancestor Bell Hooks wrote, one of the most vital ways we sustain ourselves is by building communities of resistance, places where we know we are not alone. Our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, this congregation, the Pink Haven Coalition, every mutual aid and global solidarity effort, all of the libraries, all of them, communities of resistance, places where we know we are not alone. This is where we are invited to show up and live through together. As Reverend Green reminds us, we don't have to lie down and get eaten. We have options. Our justice loving ancestors are showing us the way. Our global partners in this movement for human rights and climate justice are showing us the way. Our Unitarian Universalist values are showing us the way. Stay with us, friends. Together we will mourn and resist, disrupt and heal, weep, sing, and imagine. Together we will persevere. I want to lift you up, UU community of Cambria, for the vital role you play in this larger story of global solidarity and resistance to oppression. For years, you have generously supported our broad UUSC family through Guest at Your Table. Thank you for continuing your dedication to UUSC's partners like the Pink Haven Coalition and the rest of our grassroots partners continuing the work for justice around the world, come what may. If you want to get more involved with the Pink Haven Project on a deeper level, please reach out to me or visit pinkhaven.org. We also launched a Faithify campaign this week to raise as much as we can to get people into safer situations before the new administration takes over at the end of January. If you go to faithify.org and search for Pink Haven, you will find us. Please give generously and share the campaign with your networks of justice lovers. Thank you. Now, friends, I'd like to end with one of my favorite blessings. This blessing was written by Dory Midnight and Roundy Fosh Stewart. This is a blessing that was written especially for us, my queer family, and I hope you will take it in. Allies and accomplices, you too can receive this blessing. So I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze and go ahead and move your body as the Spirit moves you. Perhaps place your hands gently on your face or over your heart. Blessed are you, awakener, Life of all worlds, who removes sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. Blessed are you, generous creatrix, who stretches forth the earth upon the waters. Blessed are you, sacred flame, who illuminates and shines upon everyone and everything. Blessed are you, holy fashion designer, who delights in the way we dress ourselves as altars. Blessed are you, liberation worker, who moves us to stretch and expand towards freedom. Blessed are you, nameless and infinite, who made us in your image and reminds us that all bodies are sacred and holy. Blessed are you, wings of gold, who crowns my people, all people, with splendor. Blessed are you, holy breath, who gives me this gift every day. Blessed are you, abundance, who helps me remember I have everything I need. Blessed are you, the way, who meets me where I am. Blessed are you, source of life, who I draw on for strength and who reminds me that rest is a sacred act. Blessed are you, fabulous one, who loves me just as I am. Blessed are you, weaver of being, who shaped the human being with wisdom, making us all openings and vessels for the body. It is known that we are miracles, and all bodies are miracles. Blessed are you, you of many names, for revealing infinite paths of healing. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.